There's a kind of grief that doesn't have a name. Not the grief for someone you lost, but for someone you never became. The lives you could have lived but didn't. The versions of yourself that only exist in your imagination, in the quiet moments before sleep, or in the dull ache that hits you when you see someone doing what you once dreamed of doing. This is the silent weight of unlived lives, and it haunts more of us than we like to admit. We are told to be grateful for the life we have, and of course we should be. But gratitude doesn't erase the parallel timelines that run alongside our own. The ghost versions of us who made different choices, loved different people, took different risks. They live in the same city as we do, in the same body, but they are unreachable mere shadows behind the glass. You can't shake the feeling that they're watching you, too, wondering why you didn't come along. Sometimes these unlived lives are born from opportunities we didn't take, the job we didn't apply for, the person we didn't confess our feelings to, the move we were too afraid to make. Other times they're born from circumstances outside our control, things we never even had the chance to choose. Either way, they sit there in the attic of our minds, gathering dust but never disappearing. And the strangest part? You can't help but feel responsible for them. In the quiet moments, they don't just feel like missed opportunities. They feel like people versions of you that were abandoned. And like any abandoned thing, they whisper. They remind you of the roads you didn't walk. They ask you questions you can't answer. What if you had been braver? What if you had cared less about what others thought? What if you had loved without fear? Sometimes we silence these ghosts with distraction. We bury them under routines, responsibilities, endless scrolling, small talk, and the constant hum of noise in the modern world. Because to sit in stillness is to feel the presence of what is missing. But no matter how much we distract ourselves, they wait. They're patient. And every now and then, something cracks through a song you haven't heard in years. The smell of rain on a street you used to walk. A stranger with the same laugh as someone you once loved, and for a moment, you're back in a different life. And then it's gone again, leaving a bittersweet ache in its place. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once wrote that life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. The trouble is, when you look back, you don't just see the path you took. You see the hundreds of others you didn't. You see the people you could have been. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You can't live them all. The act of choosing one life means abandoning countless others. This is the nature of existence, and it's not something we are taught to accept. We're raised to believe in limitless potential, in the idea that we can be anything we want. But every yes is also a no to something else. Every door you walk through locks another behind you. And over time, those locked doors become ghosts. But perhaps these unlived lives are not here to torment us. Perhaps they are here to remind us that we are capable of more than the narrow path we've chosen. Not in the sense that we should try to live them all impossible, but in the sense that we can bring pieces of them into the life we do have. That musician you never became, maybe you can still play, even if it's just for yourself. That traveler you never were, maybe you can still take small journeys, even if they're only to the next town over. That braver version of you, maybe you can still speak up, even in small moments, and feel the ground shift beneath you. The ghosts don't have to disappear, but they don't have to haunt you either. You can let them live alongside you, not as accusations, but as companions, reminders of the complexity of your existence, of the infinite branching of your life. And maybe this is the only way to make peace with them, to accept that the life you have is not a betrayal of the lives you didn't live. It is simply the one that happened, and that in itself is extraordinary. The silent weight of unlived lives will never leave you completely. But maybe that's not a curse. Maybe it's a sign that you are a being of endless possibility, and that even in the life you are living now, there are still roads left to walk. We are told to live as if the world is ours to shape, yet most of us pass through life more like tenants than architects, renting moments instead of building them, leasing experiences rather than owning them in our bones. The dreams we cradle in secret, those quiet blueprints of a different life, are often left rolled up and dusty in the attic of our minds, while the present becomes a kind of holding cell where we serve time until something external grants us permission to be free. This is the silent weight. It doesn't scream, it doesn't wound visibly, but it compresses the soul like deep-sea pressure, making movement feel dangerous. It convinces us that this, whatever this happens to be, is safer than stepping into the unknown. And yet the irony is that the unknown is where all life begins, where all that is vibrant waits for us. We think the tragedy of life is death, but it's not. It's the slow suffocation of potential, the quiet withering of the self that never dares to break its own skin. To live fully is not simply to breathe and function, it is to court risk, to engage in the deliberate destruction of the familiar in exchange for the possibility of something truer. And yet so many will not because they cannot, but because the imagined pain of loss feels more real than the possible joy of becoming. This is the paradox. The lives we don't live often feel safer than the one that could be ours, and so we cling to the imagined safety of inertia. But safety is rarely safe. It's a slow erasure. You wake one day to find the colors in your mind have faded to gray, and the music that once stirred you is now background noise. The people who dared frighten you because they seemed alive in a way you weren't become distant, then foreign, and eventually unbearable mirrors. You avoid them because to see them is to confront the unspent currency of your own existence. And that currency expires. The unlived life is not a ghost haunting you, it is you haunting yourself. Each decision deferred is a small rehearsal for death, and eventually the practice becomes perfect. What remains is not the you that could have been, but the husk of the you that was afraid. But the thing about the weight of unlived lives is that it's not fixed. It is, in a strange way, a debt that can be paid in installments, in small acts of defiance against the gravity of fear. You don't have to leap. You can step. You don't have to burn your life down. You can open a single locked door. The point is to begin, because beginnings are oxygen to the soul. Every moment you start living as if you were meant to, a little of the weight lifts, and the silence inside you turns from a tomb into a kind of cathedral, vast, resonant, and filled with the echoes of a self that is finally speaking. But you must choose this. No one else can. And once you do, you may find that the life you thought was lost was only waiting for you to arrive.